Welcome to Hot Girls Have Hot Takes, and I'm your host, Anastasia. I was hoping that today would be a more fun, lighthearted episode, but then the Supreme Court did Supreme Court, as they do, made a very questionable decision, and now well, not questionable, but a decision in which is going to impact a lot of people, and now I can't stop thinking about it, and I just need to yap about it for a little bit, get it off my mind, and try to express how quite dangerous this decision was and how it's going to impact a lot of people. And for those who follow history, the patterns that you're going to see are not going to be great and or ideal. So basically what I'm getting at is the Supreme Court, they basically ruled in a case involving Louisiana, and Louisiana brought a case having to do with what they were considering discriminatory voting districts based off of race, which is ironic to say the least. Basically, they were arguing that there were two black majority districts that were just intentionally discriminatory because it was based solely off of race and no other reason. The only reason why these congressional districts were made was because it would support the black vote or something in that vein. I'm going to put a disclaimer here. I am not trying to make this a fully educational video about the overlaying topic. I'm going to do my best to ensure I have the important facts straight, but this is not going to be a deep dive into the current situation. It's more going to be a bit of an editorial and my thoughts about basically what happened and what has the potential of happening going forward and why we should care. So if my facts are wrong, please let me know, but don't be mean about it. There's no need to be aggressive about it. I'm a human. I make mistakes. I read things wrong. I misinterpret words. It's all good. The intent is pure, though. Going back to the topic at hand. So basically, the Supreme Court sides with Louisiana. They're like, oh, yeah, no, actually, y'all have a really good point. And it was a really crazy vote. It was a 6-3 vote majority of the Supreme Court basically siding with Louisiana in this case. And now what that did was further diminish the protections within Section 2, which, let me be more specific. Section 2 of the Voting Acts, oh my God, can I speak? The Voting Act of 1963. It's Section 2 of the Voting Act of 1963. 65! Oh my God, sorry guys. And that section was specifically created in order to prevent practices and procedures that could impact votes based off of someone's race, ethnicity, language, all of it. And it was supposed to basically say, it was supposed to protect these cases of, districts where there might be a higher, there's a black majority in this area, so obviously it makes sense that the congressional district would have a higher black population because there's a higher black population that lives in this specific area, and that's how the congressional map was drawn. And it has nothing to do with this district gets to be black because black people live here. Like, that wasn't the point. It was literally just, cool, we're making our congressional things, and we can't splice and dice a district that has a high majority of a black population, POC, Latino. They can't diminish these districts by slicing them and dicing them in any single way they wanted. That's what Section 2 was supposed to prevent, and it did for a good while, but unfortunately there's been a lot of picking apart of the Voting Act of 1965, which has sort of weaken some of the powers and the protections, which was, if we follow history, is probably super intentional, as we are seeing here. But going back to this whole case, one of the most direct impacts that's happening right now, effects, so to say, because I am speaking and not writing, and so I don't need to know if it's effect with an A or an E, but what Louisiana has done, which please fact check me on this if I am incorrect, but well, okay, I'm going to fact check myself because I have access to a computer. So I'm about to look up and see if there's ever been a time in history that have states ever called states of emergency to stop an election. Doot. Please enjoy this elevator music while I figure this out. So basically, what the governor of Louisiana did was he issued a state of emergency, which is known as an election emergency, I believe it's called. Yes. So a state of emergency specifically under the parameter of an election emergency. And while it is not very common that these states of emergencies get called, the purpose of election emergencies has to sort of do in the cases of, for example, a global pandemic, natural disasters, true issues of constitutionality within a parameter of some portion of the voting process, administration issues, a lack of polling locations, something like that, that but basically results in the best option is we need to postpone this vote until these issues can resolve themselves and or people can vote in a more safe manner. So he called the state of emergency, and his argument was based off of the constitutionality aspect, and he was deeming that the two black majority districts were unconstitutional, and if he was to proceed with this election, it would be unconstitutional, and so he didn't want to proceed, and it has been postponed until July 15th or later. But there is a caveat, as there always tends to be, in situations such as these. And so how it's working is the ongoing ballot for more, let me rethink how I want to say this. So basically, the congressional voting aspect of this election is the main one getting postponed. So that is the candidates, Congress, Senate, House of Reps, all of that. Those are the ones that are getting pushed further out until they can basically implement a new map, a new redistricted map to boost the power of more Republican candidates, to boost Republican seats in the congressional districts, right? But all of the other elections, such as the state's elections, the local elections, those are still happening as planned. But it's just the congressional that's going to be pushed back, which is a pretty concerning idea. And while it's very jarring, it's not illegal. It can be done. It's very sussy and icky and comes off very voter suppressory, right? And because of this current act, we are now seeing a lot of other Republican-led states follow suit. So Tennessee, I believe, I know Florida. I literally had a list. Where did it go? I think Mississippi. Yeah, there's Tennessee. Yep, Mississippi, Alabama. They're all basically trying to vie a way to add Republican seats in these congressional footholds, right? And the goal is to try and solidify the Republican majority within Congress so that these policies can continue to be pushed out with very little pushback from an opposing party, right? As is the never ending partisan issue that we've been dealing with for quite a while now. I think the big issue with this is obviously, more, democratically led states are going to be doing the same thing, right? And there's probably going to be a really big, fierce legal battle on all sides of, the question now, like, questioning, is this constitutional? Are we allowed to do this? You're losing the protections of Section 2, which would have made a lot of these arguments a lot easier theoretically. But, when there's a more Republican-led Supreme Court, a lot of these decisions, which we would never question, of, oh, that right would never go away, and then they, disappear overnight, so it seems. It's a trend that's probably going to keep continuing, and it's going to cause tons of friction, and there's going to be really heated legal battles, as there should be. I mean, there's people who literally died for people's right to vote. This was not a right that came easily or with no blood on the hands. And it is something that had to be fought for through a very racist and patriarchal society, and it was a massive win. And very clearly, this type of gerrymandering and redistricting is to dilute the vote of, Black Americans, these more minority communities, because their votes really do have a really important impact about how policies get passed and decisions that get made. And once a party is in power, they're not going to want to give that up easily. And if they can't do it the right way, sometimes they basically cheat to get their way, right? I don't think that's a controversial take. I mean, what is gerrymandering if not changing the rules of the game so you can win? No matter how hard everybody tries to find the original rule book. It's basically like if you take the rules of a board game, and as you're playing the game, you scratch out the rules and create your own rules. Even in the case of, like, thank you, son. Even in the case of, Uno, right? A very intense card game that many of us play. There is a vote on, hey, are we stacking? And if the decision is yes, then everyone agrees to those terms and they continue. Oh, do we pull a card until we have that card, or do we only pull one? That's a decision that's made by the group entirely. Almost like a vote, right? Like a vote of the parameters in which the game is going to be played. And when gerrymandering and all this redistricting happens, it really screws with the rules of the game, right? Especially when you're about to start the game and then someone goes, ooh, actually, I just remembered, I don't like how this board looks, so we actually need to stop the game so I can make it how I want it. That's basically what's going on here. And I know that a lot of this is going to be a fun comment section, and it's fine. Once you talk politics, shit always hits the fan. And my whole thing is, defend your take within reason, of course. But my take is, voting rights are so important, especially when we're supposed to live in a, what is, the United States is like supposed to be like a democratic republic, right? Like, do I have a baseline understanding? Because I know that some people will get that. I think it is a democratic republic. My history teachers would be horrified. Boom. Okay. Correction. I'm correcting myself. So the United States is a constitutional federal republic, right? Which is crazy because a lot of people are like, it's a democracy, and it's really not, guys. And it's okay. It is a federal republic, which means that the Constitution calls the shots, right? So that's why anything that attacks the Constitution is a bad time in a constitutional republic, federal republic. That's so many words. I'm sorry, I'm like rereading this definition to educate myself. It's just really ironic because so like the entire point is like in a republic, the people call the shots, right? And then the government is supposed to be like, okay, you said the things, we're going to do the things that you said. In a perfect utopia, that is what would be happening right now. But we're actually getting kind of like a flip-flop, right? We're getting a flippity-do where it's instead the not the federal government. Wait. I'm sorry. Am I just confusing myself? I thought this was going to be an easy episode, but clearly I can't even keep my facts straight here. So basically, like, federal republic is like sort of like an oxymoron in a little bit. Federalism, right? The national government can do certain things that states can't, but if the national government doesn't specify something, then the states can be like, ooh, so I can make a rule about that. Got it. Federalism. We love it. But it's interesting because it's sort of this kind of clashing of, you know, they're supposed to execute. We like hold the power theoretically, right? But our elected officials execute that power. So in their noggins, right, they know, ooh, if I can control who is added to the voting pool, we get to control the overall narrative, right? We get to control the decisions, we get to control the legislation, we get to control basically everybody. And like historically, you know, the United States has not exactly been the most chill nation about ensuring that the people are adequately represented. That's why this Supreme Court ruling, it's shocking in the way of, it feels like government power overreach, but I know it's not because that's just how our government is structured. I just think it's really weird that 9 people get to call a lot of big shots on a lot of big things and we can't really veto it, and I think it's weird. This is why you need to care about politics and pay attention to your political science classes, okay, kids? I'm serious. Because then you're going to end up like me, bumbling like an idiot, Googling what the hell a constitutional federal republic is, okay? Just pay attention to your history teachers and your social studies teachers. They know what they're talking about. Especially nowadays, okay? Just please pay attention and, fight for what you care about. But anyway, trying to put my thoughts all together here. It's jarring, right? It's very jarring when these decisions sort of snap around and happen because I feel that many of us are very comfortable in the lives that we have because someone has already fought for it. Right? Somebody already did the hard part to make sure that you can have a more cushiony life. It's why, I as a woman can have my own bank account, can have my own credit card, can apply to loans, can have a job, can have these choices, is because someone fought really fucking hard because they never had those choices. And they knew, I don't want the next generation to experience this. And they did something about it. That being said, we're trying to roll back on some of those protections. Looking at you, Supreme Court, again. And also, I would like it to note that I do not put politicians on a pedestal, okay? They are elected officials that are there to do their jobs. And so they are all open season for critique, regardless of the aisle that you're on. I don't glamorize politicians. They should not be praised for doing their job. And they are not free of criticism. So, moving forward. But basically, the point, if I will actually get to it, blood, sweat, and tears went into the comfort that you get to position yourself into, right? And people of my complexion, right, I think sometimes we tend to intentionally not realize that because it's uncomfortable when we have to sit and recognize the act of racism and the patriarchy within how this society was shaped, because if I challenge it, then my cushiness goes away because now I'm seen as difficult or anti-political or this, that, or not anti-political, but, you know, somebody who doesn't know what she's talking about and I should be in the kitchen and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, there have been so many instances where, you know, a black woman brings up something, because usually in my experience, when something just flies off the handle in society, right, who is usually the first person to speak up? Probably a black woman, a woman of color, and they are getting literally ripped apart, right? And it's fascinating because, you know, I'm listening to them and they have the point is, like, they are making the argument, it's sound, they know exactly what they're talking about, probably because they're talking from an actual lived experience that no one else of a paler complexion is probably ever going to come anywhere close to. You know, they talk about it, they get crucified. Somebody regurgitates their words and their points, and then all of a sudden they're praised, put on a pedestal, being like, oh my God, give a shit. So I always like to come from the standpoint of, I want to try to uplift conversations that have already been happening without putting and regurgitating out somebody's words and emotions and lived experience, because it's not something that I've experienced. And my rule is, honestly, if I can't say it any better than them, I'm not going to, right? Like, if somebody makes the point, uplift the voice and move on. Like, you don't always need to put your opinion into everything. Ironic for an entire podcast in which is based off of hot takes and opinions, but in those areas I try to tread carefully and very respectfully, because so